What could have happened, you know?
Two young boys aged 12 and 9 found dead in their Brampton home, and now their father stands accused of killing them. 52-year-old Edwin Bastidas has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Talia Ritchie joins us live from the scene near Sandalwood Parkway and Credit View. And Talia, just a horrible, heartbreaking crime in that community tonight.
That's right, Dwight, and police haven't confirmed how the boys died. They did say that there were no obvious signs of trauma when they arrived on scene. Now, this has been a fairly large and active scene throughout the day, with police cars lining the street of the home, but also up the road where the boys went to school. The neighbors we spoke with today were in complete shock, saying they couldn't believe what happened to these kids. 2 kids allegedly murdered in their home by their own father. Neighbors have identified the boys as 9-year-old Nicholas and 12-year-old Jonathan Bastidas. These students knew Jonathan and say he had autism.
He was a really good boy. We know him because he used to come around and say hi to everybody.
Yeah, he was a really nice kid, always friendly with anyone. He didn't really cause any trouble, and he knew all the teachers and students.
Peel police were called to this home on Hibberton Crescent near Sandalwood Parkway and Credit View Road. Police say they received the call from someone inside the house. Neighbors tell us the boys lived here with their mother, father, and aunt.
I'm shocked. I couldn't sleep last night because I can see them with their parents all the time, going and coming. And they're nice, happy kids.
When they pass, they talk nice, they say hello, and we never hear nothing. So something going on, you know.
There are no other charges for anybody else at this point. It's only on the father.
52-year-old Edwin Bastidas has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Police could not say if he was previously known to them.
As officers, when we come to scenes that especially when they involve children, it's difficult. And I know with the public, when they hear something like this, it isn't. We don't take great joy in having to tell the public about this, but like I said earlier, this is our job to report to the public on situations such as this.
Officers were also at nearby St. Bonaventure School today, where neighbors tell us the boys were in grades 4 and 7. The Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board wouldn't confirm the boys' names, but did say 2 of their students died and that their flag has been lowered to half staff. A nearby church confirmed the mother was a parishioner there. Now, the boys' school also had a tragic events response team on hand today to support the students. Officers also wanting to remind people tonight that even though they've arrested the father, this investigation is far from over. They're still appealing for witnesses and anyone with information to contact the Peel Homicide Unit or Crime Stoppers. These 2 deaths mark Peel Region's 24th and 25th homicides of 2019. Dwight?
Talia, thank you. The Fontaine Miller faced cross-examination today at the trial of an off-duty Toronto police officer and his brother. Michael and Christian Theriault are facing aggravated assault and obstructing justice charges in connection with a serious assault on Miller nearly 3 years ago. As Lorenda Redekop reports, a lawyer spent the day trying to find inconsistencies in Miller's version of events.
Fontaine Miller arrives for what turns out to be a much different day in court. Tense at times, Miller frustrated, under cross-examination by Michael Lacey. He's the lawyer for Michael Theriault, the Toronto police officer off duty that night in 2016. Lacey pointed to inconsistencies between Miller's statements now versus earlier. First, he plays part of Miller's 911 call that night.
911, bro.
Fire, police, fire.
911. You're under arrest.
Hello?
Hello? It's 911. You're under arrest.
Hello?
I know.
Previously in this legal process, Miller says he was never told he was under arrest. He said to the court that his response of, "I know," is not to being told that, and adds that he always thought the question was whether he was told he was under arrest before the altercation. Miller says by the 911 call, the horrific beating he described yesterday was done. Lacey brought up evidence photos. One example, a blue Bic lighter, something Miller identified as his yesterday. Previously, he didn't recognize it. Lacey also shows the photo of a pair of black gloves. Miller doesn't recognize them. Lacey asks, "Did you know that your DNA was found inside those gloves?" The chance of the DNA not being Miller's? 1 in 440 quadrillion. Miller suggests it was his blood or spit from that night. Lacey also suggests Miller and his 2 friends were car hopping, something one of Miller's friends testified to. The Theriault brothers' account is that Miller was in their parents' truck and they chased him, with Miller attacking them with a pipe. Miller told Lacey, "With all due respect, I'm not trying to be a storyteller up here," and said he feels like he's expected to remember every word he's said over the past 3 years. The cross-examination continues tomorrow in a trial that's coming close to being finished. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Oshawa.
The gun violence plaguing the city continued overnight with 6 separate shootings. 1 person was killed and 3 others injured. A man walked into a bar on Jane Street near Lawrence and opened fire. 2 men were shot. 1 died on scene. The second was taken to a trauma center with multiple gunshot wounds and remains in serious condition. Another shooting, a short drive to the east at Lawrence and Dufferin. 2 cars were seen fleeing that area. Police believe a minor crash happened, and shortly after, a vehicle riddled with bullets showed up at a nearby hospital, and a man made his way inside with gunshot wounds. He was taken to a trauma center with critical injuries. And the man was shot on a residential street near Gerrard and Greenwood Avenue around 4 a.m. The victim was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police are asking anyone with information on any of the shootings to come forward.
Thousands of Toronto residents are without their city councillor today after Jim Karygiannis was kicked out of City Hall after a review of his campaign finances. I'm City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly. I'll explain why that matters and what comes next, coming up.
It was a slick commute into work this morning for many in the GTA thanks to our first snowfall of the season, and it is expected to continue until the end of the weekend. Greg Ross is live right now at Highway 7 in the 400. How's it looking out there right now, Greg?
Well, Dwight, it's pretty clear out here right now. The driving conditions aren't so bad. This is Highway 400 right here beside me. Highway 407 just over there. Right now we're seeing just regular traffic on both highways, but it was a completely different story this morning during the morning drive. We saw multiple collisions on both highways, multiple lane closures as a result on both highways, and multiple drivers having issues driving in the snow.
It was a messy morning.
OPP Sergeant Carrey Schmidt says it's to be expected when we get our first snowfall of the season.
Our crashes were double or triple normally what we'd see on a normal commute into work. Hundreds of crashes. We had probably 40 or 50 crashes at any given time through the morning rush hour periods.
On Highway 12 near Port Perry, a tow truck driver was hit and killed while trying to pull another car out of the ditch.
The tow truck driver was outside of his vehicle. He was struck by this third vehicle and he was killed.
He says oftentimes people don't adjust their driving habits in order to handle the slick conditions, speed being the biggest problem.
Your stopping distance, your controllability of your vehicle is going to be reduced, and it's going to cause problems if you're not driving accordingly.
I woke up this morning, I saw the snow, and I knew it was going to be a busy day.
Frisk Veneziano is the co-owner of CarStar Collision Center in Brampton. Some of the cars involved in those collisions were brought onto his lot this morning.
As you can see, severe suspension damage and some serious body damage to the vehicle also.
And there was one other thing we noticed about this car.
As you can notice, they aren't having any snow tires here.
I'm sure the tire shops are having a lineup of cars right now getting their snow tires installed.
Not installing snow tires is just one of the things people neglect to do to ensure their safety while driving in the snow.
I saw plenty of cars with still snow on their hoods and snow on their windshields, and whatever the wipers would wipe off is all that they would wipe because they're not ready for it.
Schmidt says in snowy conditions, it's a good idea to leave your house a little bit earlier. Make sure you give yourself lots of extra time. It's also a good idea to clear off all of that snow on your car before driving. And he says, most importantly, you have to drive according to the conditions. So if it's snowy or icy, it's a good idea to slow down. Dwight?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Greg. So, Colette, will it continue to be snowy and icy?
in some areas, very snowy and icy. And I think that's what we're going to get into when we show you where those, what were snow squall watches at this time yesterday, are snow squall warnings. But elsewhere, we're still going to see some flurries this evening, and that's been happening in the GTA. And you can see why when you get a little moisture coming in, and our temperatures are down here at freezing, 0 for Toronto and Hamilton and St. Catharines. And look at that colder air just back to the west, so -4, -1 in London, Sarnia, -1 already into Windsor as well. That colder air pushing in, so our temperatures really coming down overnight tonight. I mentioned the snow squalls, so this is through tonight into tomorrow afternoon. There is the potential for 20 to 30 centimeters. In a few spots, it's highly localized, but possibly even more than that. And of course, reduced visibility, you get into these whiteout conditions. It's all these areas that you see here in white and then with the blue border. So that's where we have the snow squall warnings. And then the blue are some of these travel advisories just because of some messy roadways there too. And the radar paints the picture for you pretty well. So we're getting a northwesterly flow, that fetch coming across Lake Huron, coming across Georgian Bay. But see how at the moment it's not terribly well organized. We're getting some bands of snow, but they're not really coming across like those streamers when we see the squalls. So as those winds pick up, these will become more organized, but they also become more localized. So you're in clear conditions, and then all of a sudden you drive into those whiteout conditions. And some of these pushing all the way towards London. So if you're watching from there or traveling in that direction, you may be seeing some significant accumulations there too. We'll take a closer look at that a little bit later on in the show. But I do just want to talk about what we're going to be seeing for even the GTA. Through the evening hours, we're still going to see some of these flurries that we might get in some areas, 1 to probably less than 2 centimeters accumulating, but those ending as we go overnight into tomorrow morning, but the temperatures plummeting. So as those temperatures really come down, we may have some flurries returning in the afternoon. Otherwise, there'll be some sunshine in between, but it's really going to be giving us significant wind chills for tonight. So -5, but it doesn't even take a very strong wind for it to feel like -10 to -12 tomorrow morning. Dwight, that is the high tomorrow afternoon, 1 degree. So a warm up this weekend. I don't think you're going to love it, but I'll show it to you coming up.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
I was just shocked. I just couldn't believe it. How could they come along and say that in a few months we had to be out of here?
Just a few months ago, there were 150 seniors living in this building. Today, it's under new ownership, and there are just 2 remaining. I'm Nick Boisvert. Coming up, we'll explain what happened and check in on one of the last holdouts.
Were you one of the thousands of frustrated TTC commuters stuck on the subway this morning? This was the scene on the ground after a power outage on the Bloor-Danforth line between Pape and St. George stations. During the morning rush, the TTC brought in shuttle buses to get passengers to their destinations, and that, of course, meant long lines of people waiting to board those buses at Broadview and Danforth. Tens of thousands of Scarborough residents are without a city councillor today after yesterday's shocking news that Jim Carrey was kicked off council. Experts say it's unprecedented for Toronto, and as City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly explains, questions are swirling over what comes next.
Staff are busy working in the councillor office for Ward 22, but there's no trace of Jim Carrey, not even his nameplate.
Councillor decision-making, operations, integrity and transparency.
First elected in 2014, the now former councillor was kicked out yesterday afternoon. A recent city review of his campaign finances found he violated the province's Municipal Elections Act by spending $25,000 over the limit for parties. By phone, Carrey told us he's contemplating a legal fight to get his job back and claims this is all a mistake.
It'll be interesting to see whether he can make a credible case on that.
This expert says he'll face an uphill climb battling provincial legislation that was beefed up before last year's election.
It was a tough love prescription. If you violate the requirements of the Act, you would be both removed from office and barred from running again. So no, this is we're in uncharted territory with this.
Now it's not clear how long City Hall will feature a Carrey-sized hole on council. Here in the former councillor's ward of Scarborough Agincourt, there are 100,000 residents. And in the last municipal election, around 47% of voters backed Carrey. That's leaving thousands of people without their spokesperson at City Hall.
I like the guy. As a person, as a human being, I really like him. So there's nothing.
If you could say something to him right now, what would you say?
Just be careful and clarify the stuff. I'm sure there's an explanation. There always is.
I think that's the only way to do it. You know, if it's illegal, illegal, right?
He should be accountable, whatever he has done. Right? That's being dishonest to the people he served.
City officials are set to declare the ousted councillor's seat vacant later this month, which could lead to a by-election or council appointing his replacement. And those are moves the city can take whether or not Karygiannis brings his fight to court. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario MPPs have voted in support of a motion to defend religious expression in this province.
Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carried? I declare the motion carried. Orders of the day.
Government shall oppose any
Liberal
law.
MPP Michael Couture introduced the motion in response to Quebec's Bill 21. The bill bans Quebec public servants from wearing religious symbols, such as a hijab or turban, on the job. Couture says he wanted to take a symbolic stand against the law.
I believe that it is our duty as members of the legislature to promote and protect the rights of all Ontarians guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Afternoon, I will introduce
The motion did not specifically condemn the Quebec law. Instead, it said Ontario will oppose any law restricting religious freedoms. The Ontario government is launching a review of the Peel District School Board after allegations of anti-black racism. Education Minister Stephen Lecce announcing the review in a statement released today. According to Lecce, concerns about anti-black racism have been raised by students, families, and the board's Director of Education. A 2016 report from the Peel Board found young black men reported experiencing bias and racism in Peel classrooms. A few months ago, a Toronto seniors building was home to some 150 residents. Today, there are just 2 left. They're being forced to move out after the building was sold earlier this summer, but one of the last holdouts says she's going to keep fighting. Nick Boisvert has her story.
For the last 5 years, Betty Robinson has been comfortable and happy at her Rosedale apartment. That all changed in July when the building was sold.
I was just shocked. I just couldn't believe it. How could they come along and say that in a few months we had to be out of here?
That deadline is approaching fast. At the end of the month, Davon Hill Senior Living says it'll officially close, and along with it, phone lines, food service, and security. The 97-year-old calls it a threat.
There are 2 of us left here, and the people that have gone haven't gone willingly, in a sense. They've gone because they're frightened.
The notices are now piling up, asking her to find a new home urgently. Davon Hill has provided some help for the displaced residents, including offering a relocation consultant and helping people with their moves. The local MPP says that's not enough to make things right. Jessica Bell raised the issue at Queen's Park today. She says the mass exodus of 150 seniors should have never happened.
The forced removal of these seniors is legal, but it's unethical.
During question period, the Ford government said Davon Hill wasn't safe.
I got the report from the retirement home authority, and they told me that the home actually didn't provide safe and secure environment for the seniors.
But people who lived there say that wasn't the case, and there's a worry Davon Hill could set a dangerous precedent.
The Davon Hill non-eviction process lays a template for every developer who wants to kick people out of their homes in the city for redevelopment.
Robinson won't make that easy.
Why is it that you're still here when everyone
Well,
else
I'm
is
still
gone?
here because this is where I want to live.
And Robinson says she will leave if she no longer feels safe in her home. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
And to feel safe.
A new study on surgical practices says the number of objects left unintentionally inside of patients is growing. We'll bring you the shocking details after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
You can call it a joint venture or a dope deal. Whatever it is, Drake is now in the cannabis retail game. The Toronto rapper inked a deal with Canada's biggest cannabis producers, Canopy Growth. He will take a 60% stake in a venture called More Life Growth. As part of the marketing campaign, Drake's company has been giving away flowers on the streets of Toronto. Here's one woman's reaction to her bouquet.
I'm walking down the street, I'm out buying some stuff, I'm going on a little trip tomorrow, and somebody stops me and they're like, would you like a free bouquet? And I'm like, what's the catch? I said nothing, so I got this.
Canopy CEO released a statement about the business venture today, saying Drake's perspective as a cultural leader and an entrepreneur and Canopy's growth knowledge will bring an unmatched cannabis experience to global markets. A new study released today shows a disturbing trend for anyone going into hospital for an operation. A growing number of what are called foreign objects like sponges, medical equipment, and more are being left inside patients after surgery. Nicole Ireland explains.
The report by the Canadian Institute for Health Information says over the past 2 years, more than 550 medical objects, things like sponges, needles, clamps, and scissors, were accidentally left inside patients during surgeries in Canada. That's a 14% increase from the number of similar mistakes 5 years prior to that. In Canada, items have been forgotten inside patients about 10 times for every 100,000 surgical procedures. That's more than twice the average rate for the dozen developed countries measured, including Ireland, Italy, Israel, and Spain. The report notes that it's possible the difference between countries could be accounted for by flaws in reporting medical errors. Regardless, mistakes are happening. The report doesn't explain why or how medical objects are forgotten inside patients. The Canadian Institute for Health Information says it's possible that in some cases, small items are missed when staff need to spell each other off during long surgeries. Experts say one of the most important ways to prevent these mistakes from happening is to keep a clear inventory of all equipment used during every procedure and to follow a detailed surgical checklist to make sure nothing gets left behind. Nicole Ireland, CBC News, Toronto.
Winnipeg police are upgrading charges in the stabbing death of a 3-year-old toddler. 33-year-old Daniel Jensen is now facing a second-degree murder charge in the death of Hunter Straight Smith. The boy was stabbed multiple times while he slept at home last Wednesday. Straight Smith died later in hospital after being taken off life support on Saturday. Jensen is said to have been in an on-again, off-again relationship with the 3-year-old's mother. Jensen was previously charged with attempted murder and assault causing bodily harm.
Just to see that smile on his face, that was genuine, and he was as surprised as the rest of us, I think.
Moving his legs after an experimental surgery in Thailand, former Humboldt Bronco Ryan Strachnitsky is now recovering from the procedure. We'll let you know how he's doing coming up a little later. The parents of a woman killed in an illegal rooming house fire have been awarded $1.3 million in damages. Alicia Lemaire died 3 days after the blaze in 2013. Her parents sued the landlord, and as Katie Nicholson explains, they hope that now others won't have to suffer like they did.
Bye, Mommy. I love you.
This is one of the last images Alicia Lemaire's parents have of their daughter, 6 years after losing her. Today, a victory in court on her behalf.
Hopefully this will be a deterrent for others. Illegal housing kills people, harms people, has to stop, it's not acceptable.
The house Alicia lived in had been illegally converted into a 7-unit rooming house with only one working smoke alarm in the entire building. Her apartment had one exit, no smoke detector, and bars on her bedroom window. The landlord, Konstantin Lysenko, ended up paying $75,000 in fines. But Lemaire's parents didn't think that went far enough and sued him. Today, this decision. We, the jury, find Konstantin Lysenko responsible for the death of Alicia Lemaire. The jury awarded Lemaire's parents $1.3 million, including a much larger than usual amount for loss of care, guidance, and companionship.
Mr. Lysenko, if I could just chat with you a little bit about the judgment.
Lysenko didn't want to talk today, but during the trial, he said he attempted to be a good landlord, even though he also said he didn't know the house had to be up to fire code or licensed. As for the bars in the window of the basement suite, he said it was stupid. It was stupid for sure.
No landlord should put the health and safety of their tenants at risk. And I think this sends a very strong message that if you're going to rent a property for money, it better be safe.
But for the parents, the loss will never go away.
I'm lost without my daughter. I'll always miss her. I miss her dearly. I always will. I'm serving a life sentence with the loss of my daughter. Nobody would want to be Alicia. Nobody would want to be me. And going through this process is going to help that so other people hopefully don't have to suffer like we did.
Love you. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto Police releasing a sketch of a man they're trying to identify in connection with an arson near Jarvis and Shooter. The man was seen leaving the fire as emergency crews arrived. The fire broke out early last Saturday. While crews were trying to bring the flames under control, 2 firefighters fell from the building's roof. One of them was seriously injured. We have an update now on Ryan Strashnitsky. The Humboldt Bronco player left paralyzed after that tragic bus crash last year. He's worked hard ever since to regain movement, and right now, he's in Bangkok, Thailand, recovering from surgery that could be life-changing. Carolyn Dunn has more.
Just one day after surgery, and this.
You almost did both at the one time.
Ryan Strashnitsky's paralyzed leg is moving, the result of an implant that sends electrical currents down his spine. Back in Airdrie, Alberta, Ryan's mom, Michelle, is watching that video yet again.
Just to see that smile on his face, that was genuine, and he was as surprised as the rest of us, I think. This is proof that you can't give up faith. You can't give up hope.
Something good might be around the corner.
Yeah.
The best case scenario is that he'll have some significant recovery and functional movements where then they'll last for the rest of his life.
Aaron Phillips has been studying the epidural implant procedure for almost a decade.
I think the worst case scenario is that he maintains this obvious restoration of some movement below his limbs that you're seeing today.
The device sends electrical signals down pathways that are preserved but dormant. Awakening those pathways can help with movement, but also improve bladder, bowel, and heart functions. And Ryan, who is paralyzed from the chest down, hopes it will give him some core control to improve his para-hockey game. Dr. Richie Gill is a paraplegic who had 2 devices implanted in Thailand. It was his improved movement that inspired Ryan to travel the same path.
It's a really positive experience when you start seeing the small movements and start the process of mapping, which is really programming the device to allow you to be able to do some of those movements within your legs.
Ryan has 5 weeks of nearly full-time physio ahead of him in Bangkok.
I just dare him to do whatever he wants to do.
It's a pretty safe bet that Ryan Strashnitsky will take that dare. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Airdrie, Alberta.
Toronto FC is heading to the Pacific Northwest for their chance at the MLS Cup, taking on the Seattle Sounders this weekend.
These games, it's hard to say, but I think the game will start off initially with a fair amount of intensity to it and speed to it, and then again, once the game gets going, we'll see kind of how it plays from there.
Toronto beat the defending champions Atlanta United FC last week, securing a spot in the Cup final for the third time in 4 years. After having their last practice here at BMO Training Ground, the team left for Seattle today. Their focus now turns to the big game on Sunday.
I like to think it's just a balance between knowing we're playing a special game, but also getting ready like we've been getting ready and preparing for the past games this year. You know, if we're here, it's because we deserve it and we've been doing things the right way. I think we're ready and we're not about to change anything in terms of our mindset and our focus.
The game will take place at CenturyLink Field in Seattle on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You'll be seeing a new face on Toronto's rugby field, New Zealander sports star Sonny Bill Williams.
Hey guys, Sonny here. Just a quick message to the Toronto fans and team. I'm looking forward to getting over there. Just want to say that I'm not coming over for a holiday, although my son might be. I'm coming over to do some work, and God willing, we can have a successful season on and off the field. Cheers, guys.
Hopefully we'll bring that little guy with him. The Wolfpack made the announcement on Twitter earlier today with this video. The signing comes on the back of the Wolfpack's biggest year in team's very short history. They were promoted to the Super League 2 years ahead of their goal. Williams is just one of 20 players to have won multiple World Cups and is said to be one of the top players in the sport. Williams is signed to a 2-year contract. Call it finally got an appointment to put on those winter tires tomorrow.
Did.
Yes, and you say I'm going to need them.
Yes, I think it is time. I mean, you know, ideally before this morning.
I know, I tried.
But I know you did. I know you did. So yeah, we're kind of at that point where we do need to do this. And also, as you're going to see the weekend forecast here, there's going to be some messy times ahead of us. Even this evening, we've got some light flurry activity with some very minor, but a little bit of accumulation in the evening hours. And you can see when we have these temperatures, they're sitting there freezing from St. Catharines, Hamilton, Toronto, over towards Oshawa, by the way, as well, and Mount Forest at -4, Barrie -2, and Peterborough at -3 at this hour. So temperatures way below seasonal. Now, as the winds are coming across the relatively warmer waters of the lakes of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay here, seeing some of these snow now not quite developed into the bands that we get into when we get into those snow squalls, but as I was showing you earlier in the show, if you were with us, do have the snow squall warnings kind of stretching around the lee side of Georgian Bay and in the lee here along the shores there of Lake Huron as well. And London, you may be impacted. In fact, you are being impacted at the moment, but I mean in terms of what the totals are going to be like, showing you those in just a moment. As for some of the flurry activity, it's been really kind of spotty around the GTA, but at times getting into some light flurries, and that's going to be the trend and what's going to happen into the evening, but I would expect it gone by midnight, and so that's why I say very, very light in terms of any accumulations. By tomorrow morning, it does mean we should get some sunshine, and so a pretty day, albeit a very cool day that we'll be looking at, and some better organization at that point to some of these squalls back here, and those will carry on into the afternoon before they start to kind of ease up because the winds will be easing up. However, as they do, we may still see some more flurries coming back into our skies tomorrow afternoon. So a return of that light stuff coming our way. As we look into the weekend, though, some cloud cover, some sketchy flurries early in the day possible, but primarily it'll be later in the day when we'll get a little bit of light snow coming through. And then we get some breaks, and then the next bit of precipitation comes in actually for the second half of the weekend. So we are looking at seeing some precipitation there at times, which will be rain because the temperatures will warm up. I just do want to show you London there. This is Friday morning, 7, but by the time we get into the afternoon hours, probably going up there close to 10 centimeters. Nothing that interesting elsewhere. Interesting temperatures, though, for us overnight, -5, feeling -10 to -12 tomorrow morning with the wind chill. That's it. These are the highs for tomorrow with those scattered afternoon flurries, just barely above freezing. And there's that little bit of a warm-up. Dwight, I mentioned it, so I got to show it to you. Sunday, 6 degrees. That's why it turns into rain showers. And then cold air. comes right back at us in the beginning of next week. Really cold air.
It is Canada. It is winter. It's to be expected.
Is that where we are? That's right.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
It will be the first time all of Canada's provincial and territorial premiers will meet face-to-face since the federal election, and Toronto is set to be the meeting place. The premiers last met in July in Saskatoon. CBC learned today that the get-together will take place on December 2nd. Sources with knowledge of the meeting said it was Ontario's Premier Doug Ford who offered to host the gathering. Since the Liberals were re-elected, tensions have risen in regions, particularly amid growing signs of Western alienation. Possible topics of discussion will be immigration and pipelines. Liberal MPs gathered on Parliament Hill today. It was their first informal meeting since the federal election transformed their fortunes from a majority to a minority government.
What we were able to accomplish as a team for Canadians was significant, and they will be a part of that forever in terms of the big things we were able to do. But obviously there's a lot more to do.
Today's meeting was a chance to congratulate newly minted MPs and bid adieu to outgoing colleagues. The party now holds 157 seats. That's 13 seats shy of a majority in the House. The Liberals were shut out entirely in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is keeping his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford. Some MPs want Trudeau to pay more attention to caucus and its views.
Good evening, and a Black Tuesday evening it's been in Toronto and many other cities in the eastern United States and Ontario.
This week in 1965, the largest blackout to that point in history hit Ontario and the eastern United States. 30 million people were left in the dark. Here in Ontario, the Great Northeastern Blackout, as it was called, stretched from Timmins to Sarnia.
In Ontario, there seemed to be little disruption aside from traffic jams and the wails of housewives who were trying to cook dinner on electric stoves.
In the U.S., the blackout affected 8 states. The cause? A transmission line relay failed in Queenston, Ontario, near Niagara Falls. Power was fully restored in both the U.S. and Canada the next day.
If you're at the Royal Winter Fair, there's a lot of this, so you'll have to watch your step. There's actually 7 truckloads a day of manure. I'm Angelina King. So how is it all cleaned up and where does it go? I'll have more on that coming up.
A Cape Breton woman wants to make sure her neighbors stay warm this winter. Nicole McPherson created what she calls a community tree. It's stocked with hats, mitts, coats, and boots for anyone who may be in need. Last year, the tree provided 21 winter jackets. McPherson says donations have already been rolling in this season, and the support warms her heart.
We've all been at some point in our life when we struggle, and to be able to help somebody out when they're in that situation makes a world of difference to me.
I saw the tree and looked at some things and saw this nice jacket, and it helped me out a lot.
It makes me happy that people are getting it. People need stuff, and sometimes they can't afford to get it, and it's just great what she's doing here.
It is great. The community tree will stay up until the end of February. Every year, the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair brings farm life to the city, and that includes the poop. The CEO of the fair says during the 10-day event, about 1,300 metric tons of manure is produced by about 6,000 animals. As Angelina King shows us, it all has to go somewhere.
We have people that have been coming to the fair, frankly, for generations, walk in the door, take a big, deep breath and go, it smells like the Royal. And we think that's a combination of probably butter tarts, maple syrup, and manure. So that's part of the experience of coming down to the Royal. We've got 6,000 animals in here, these in bedding that we clean up every night. We've got teams of people, obviously, that are working on this 24/7.
How many times a day do you do this?
This job happens at the barn. Usually we do it twice a day. It's a little different from what we're seeing right here. So here at the Royal, we have to do it all the time. We have to be watching. We don't want our nice shaving pack to get all dirty. So we have to make sure we catch the poop and then put it into our little bins here so that we can take it out and dispose of it properly.
It looked like kind of a bit of a job, like following the cow around with his tail. What's that like?
Sometimes it's a game, I guess. But yeah, it's good. We like to keep the pack clean. It's important for us at showtime especially to keep these cows clean. It's for hygiene, it's for health, and they're going to be going into the ring show and compete, so we want them to be clean for that. But then at the farm, we always want them to be clean so that it's very hygienic and it's for their health as well.
We get trucks that are coming in 24/7, taking care of it to get it unloaded because 1,300 metric tons of it is a lot of manure. We got to get rid of it every day, sometimes several times a day, and it goes right back to the farms and is used as fertilizer.
I just never thought of it as something she would go into or be interested in.
Childproofing your microwave might not be your first instinct, but after this next story, it might be. Coming up, we'll tell you why and what manufacturers will soon have to do. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The kitchen is full of fun but dangerous.
Microwave ovens transform cooking for many of us, especially for families with children. They're easy to use and fast, but they also have the potential to cause injuries. Hundreds of children are burned every year, according to U.S. data, and manufacturers have been slow to make needed changes. But as Christine Birak tells us, soon they won't have a choice.
2.5-year-old Zoe loves exploring in the kitchen, but there are hidden dangers well within her reach, including the microwave, which Zoe just pulled open.
I just never thought of it as something she would go into or be interested in.
Nor did pediatricians until some noticed a trend. In the U.S., about 700 children a year were being rushed to hospital with traumatic scalding burns from microwaves, many involving the same food, noodle soups.
He picked up the bowl and the juice just ran straight down to his chest. The pain that I felt, it was like somebody throwing a torch in my chest.
Take some deep breaths.
Chicago-based pediatrician Kyron Quinlan proposed changes to manufacturers 15 years ago, hoping to make microwaves safer for kids.
I thought this was a quick fix. It seemed like it just made sense. It was clear how these cases were happening, and it seemed so simple to just do something different with the doors.
Childproof them, much like push-down and turn caps on cleaning products and medications, which have saved countless children from accidental poisonings. But change wouldn't come easy.
Not very well received by the microwave makers, who, by the way, are on the voting standards technical panel. They regulate themselves, basically.
But manufacturers insisted parents should keep a closer eye on their kids. But Quinlan didn't give up, and he recently won his long fight. Beginning in 2023, microwave ovens in the U.S. and Canada must have two-step safety locks, which could be as simple as pushing 2 buttons at the same time, preventing kids from easily opening the door.
If I could turn back that moment in time, and we hear this 400 times a year from the parents that come in.
While microwave burns aren't specifically tracked in Canada, doctors see an average of 650 kitchen burns per year. They're welcoming child-resistant microwaves.
If you've ever held a screaming 2-year-old who's been scalded in their diaper or in their shirt, it sounds nice and easy, but to get that off, the skin is exposed for longer and their skin is thinner, and so they're more likely to have permanent scars and or need surgery.
The kitchen is full of fun but dangerous appliances.
Child safety experts say adding your own latches can help too. As most parents know, with kids, things can happen in an instant. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
You often hear people complain that products just aren't made to last, but a long-running science experiment at a high school in Maine is proving that some things simply never go away. More than 40 years ago, a classroom discussion about food additives left students and their teacher wondering how long a Twinkie would last. They decided to find out for themselves, and well, they're still waiting for the answer.
Well, this was a chemistry class, and in the chemistry class, we happened to be discussing food additives and different types of food additives and food preservatives, and one of my students just happened to ask me, well, how long would a Twinkie last? And my response was, I don't know. And I said, well, let's do an experiment. So I gave the student a couple of dollars, asked the student to go down to Merrill & Hinckley's and pick up a package of Twinkies. So the student came back with the package. I basically unripped the package, ate one of the Twinkies, and then put the other package up on the chalkboard.
I can remember at one point in time someone said, well, maybe I should eat the Twinkie because it's only been there a few days and you know, it's probably still good. And then I remember just kind of forgetting about the Twinkie.
I basically say the Twinkie has become much like me. It's older, it's grayer, and it's more flaky.
Absolutely, I'm surprised. It's still the same shape. I mean, what's in it that makes it keep its shape after 45 years?
Sometimes there's no sharp cutoff to where you stop learning about something. And this is a wonderful example of a long-term, ongoing science experiment.
Man, we might all be gone before that Twinkie. All right, it may have snowed earlier today, but right now it looks pretty dry. We'll check in with Colette one last time after the break. Stay with us. It may be pizza, but its flavors go outside Italian cuisine. This Detroit-style pizza spot has pies that remind you of Rome, but it also has pizza with jerk chicken on it. Take a look.
I really love pizza and have childhood memories with it. So I decided to move to Toronto to learn how to make pizza and just fell in love with the style. My name is Chris Getchell. I'm the owner of Descendant Detroit-style pizza, and we are located on Queen Street in Leslieville. At Descendant, we specialize in Detroit-style pizza. It's similar to a Sicilian pizza. It's thicker like focaccia, and it has a caramelized cheese edge, and usually has sauce on top. So one of our most popular pizzas is the Yaffna, which is a Sri Lankan vegetarian pizza. And on that pizza, it has the kothu roti, mango chutney, and cilantro sour cream. We had a few of my employees from Sri Lanka. They came in with their lunch, and often it was kothu roti, and we just decided to try it on top of the pizza. It started out as a joke, to be honest, and it ended up being a really amazing pizza.
All right, so you said it was coming. It came this morning. You warned us, and there were still tons of accidents out there, so we take a while to get ready for this, but get used to it, folks. It's here to stay for a while.
Yeah, we are kind of into this pattern. We're off and on. We're going to have little bits of precipitation. In some cases, yeah, coming is like tonight. We've got this evening anyway, carrying on with some light flurry activity, and might see a centimeter accumulating or so before it tapers off. A whole different story, of course, to the west and northwest of us on the lee side of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That's where the snow squall warnings are in place, and those will wind up and carry on into tomorrow afternoon with significant accumulations. -5 tonight. Be prepared tomorrow morning. It will feel like -10 to -12 as our wind chill. Yes, that is the right sound for that. And then tomorrow afternoon, you know, we're going to get some sunshine through the day, but then probably some light flurries kind of returning into our skies in the afternoon. Shouldn't be too much there, but 1 degree, the high.
I'm going to go find my tube. That's it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Mike Wise has you covered at 11. We'll see you back here tomorrow.